Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Aagahi with Warisa Zainab.
Sure.
Fear is considered as a factor that limits a lot of things in life. To live in a world full of fear is not considered as living, but more as a survival. Talking about fears and phobias, this is something that most people are affected by, regardless of their age, gender, or social status. It is estimated that in UK, over 10 million people have some form of phobias. To explore this topic further, we have a fantastic guest today with us. This lady has over 20 years of experience in the field of mental health. She's been working day and night to relieve the suffering of people who are experiencing psychological struggles in their daily life. She is the director and founder of Mindworks UK, an organization that helps people, regardless of their financial status and faith, to combat psychological stresses, providing psychotherapy and counseling services across UK. We have Sahar Beg joining us today from UK, who is a counselor and a psychotherapist, and she's the one who has set up Mindworks UK as a way to help the most disadvantaged communities. Sahar Beg, welcome to Aagahi.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody, and Jazakallah khair for having me, Marissa. It's lovely to be here.
Alhamdulillah, happy to have you. So, Sahar, first of all, I want you to introduce yourself. What gave you the idea, the motivation to form this amazing organization?
So, alhamdulillah, it's been a long haul getting here. As you said, kindly mentioned, I've been doing this work for over 20 years. I started out quite very low in voluntary work and getting my experience for the first 5 years of qualifying. And then I went into the corporate world where I was exposed to a wealth of experience, and I was very humbled to be able to see the people and help be a facilitator where I needed to be, mashallah. So, as a counsellor, we kind of facilitate a process. Alhamdulillah, I worked in various other charities and things and always carried on my voluntary work, alhamdulillah. And then it was just one day I just thought, well, I've got to do something else. And then I realised there's actually a gap in the community where I live in London regarding kind of the faith-based therapy and just generally low-cost counselling and psychotherapy as an organisation. So and one of the fears I had actually was to set out on my own and thinking, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? Can I do this? And it was a really big fear. So I kind of just followed, just went with and just kept breathing. I spoke to many people and alhamdulillah, created Mindworks UK, which is for a whole community where I am in London. But we do have clients and we have therapists we network with nationally and internationally. So mashallah, it's grown from strength to strength. But, it's one of those fears we all have when we start and do something, or we have an idea. Mashallah, alhamdulillah. So we become a training agency as well. So for trainee counsellors and therapists to get their clinical placement hours. So we work with colleges and universities quite closely. And we have supervisors who supervise that work. Mashallah, alhamdulillah.
And you have a team of counselors that speak over 6 different languages. So that's a fantastic way to break that language barrier that we have.
Absolutely, because we found that when you speak your own mother tongue, whether it's Urdu, Punjabi, whichever language, Spanish, French, whichever language you speak, you have a better outcome in the therapy session. So we cater for everybody, not just within the Muslim community, but everybody. And mashallah, it's been great. And we actually have over 9 languages, I think now. Mashallah,
mashallah.
Which is even better. Shukr, alhamdulillah. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Because you see, a lot of people in our community, they think twice before approaching a professional mental health counselor or psychotherapist, because they feel they may not be able to explain their problem because of the language barrier, faith, or culture barrier. That's fantastic.
Well, we find that in languages, sometimes there's no word for depression or
Yeah.
anxiety
Yeah.
or things. So it's how do we then, you know, dismantle these words almost to explain what it is, and that was quite hard, but alhamdulillah, you know, we're all getting there in all the organizations. You know, we're all coming together and really, you know, preaching what counseling and is and psychotherapy and how it is beneficial. You don't have to have a mental health issue to talk to a counselor. It could be for anything you want to, you know, discuss in confidence.
Right. And what about people, Sahar, who are unable to afford private treatment, or they have been on the waiting list for NHS for a very long time and they need desperate help? How can they approach?
So to approach us, mashallah, you know, it's trial and error because we've been so inundated recently because of
Mm.
this year. But inshallah, we're trying to reach everybody that we can. But you can email us, you can give us a
Okay.
call. I've got the
Mm-hmm.
website. The website is being redone behind the scenes, mashallah.
Okay.
So it's very easy to approach us, and we will get to everybody. It's just been very busy just recently,
I can imagine.
alhamdulillah. And we do also tap into other organisations like-minded, and there's other registries as well, the BACP, the Muslim Counselling Psychotherapy Network, and psychological services, you know, out there. We do
Yeah,
signpost as well because it's about teamwork.
definitely.
So I'm a small charity, but there's
Mm.
other like-minded, and this is the thing about mental health organisations working together collaboratively to reach
Yeah,
so many more
yeah,
people, alhamdulillah.
of course. So, sir, today we're going to discuss fears and phobias. And I think most of us have some form of fear or anxiety. And
Yeah.
phobias are one of the anxiety disorders that are quite prevalent. So, first of
Mm.
all, I want you to tell our viewers, and also for our viewers, if you have any question or feedback or comment, or if you want to ask anything with Sahar Beg, please feel free to call us on our studio number, or you can comment on our Hidayat TV's Facebook page. So, Sahar, please tell us about the difference that exists between a realistic fear and an unrealistic one.
So with fears, we know these can be they're rational fears. They're fears that we can have on the everyday. You know, when we're talking about phobias, and that's an irrational fear when it's more extended just, you know, than, okay, I might be scared of a spider, which is a very common thing, or I might be scared of animals or something. That's a very the common one is we find is dogs, really. I think I've spoken to quite a few people very recently just to get a bit of research and to kind of what are their fears and phobias, and dogs is one of them. And only yesterday we had, where I also run another charity, you know, a cat came through and one of the volunteers was like frozen,
Mm.
you know. So and it's just rationalizing that this is okay. It's only
Yeah.
when the fear, the phobia actually goes beyond that and it takes over your everyday and it stops you doing what you would normally do, whether it's going into a new job, for instance,
Mm.
and you have to travel, or you have to fly, because lots of people were doing lots of work internationally, and if it stops you from doing your job and you're having to get on an aeroplane or something and it stops you, and then your phobia is just too much. So it's looking at the extent of what is this fear, how do we differentiate the phobia? If it's stopping you from doing your everyday, stopping your life and taking over, then we know it's actually
Yeah.
now we need to get some professional help here.
Yeah. You give a good example that, say, for example, somebody needs to travel for work and they have a fear of traveling by train, for example, or taking a
Yeah,
bus.
yeah,
That's definitely going to limit their life.
absolutely, because then it's going to jeopardize their work. The
Mm.
employer is going to think, well, you know, this is what's going on here, and they may
Yeah.
not know that there's a phobia going on here. They may not have disclosed this, because with phobias, you know, some people get shy and embarrassed, and we need to take that away. We need to normalize. Actually, no, actually, it's normal situations that are going on in our everyday, but it's abnormal to us that we're feeling this, you know.
Mm.
And that's where we need to create an atmosphere where we can actually in confidence talk to somebody, take away that embarrassment and that shyness. And it's really hard, very
Yeah.
hard for many people to disclose that,
Yeah.
you know, that they fear.
Of course.
They can't leave their home if their life is stopped because they can't go over the threshold of their front door. you know.
Yeah.
And this is a real phobia, for thinking that things are going to happen to themselves or their family. They're in danger. So these phobias also, these are more complex phobias, but these are where it
Yeah.
disrupts your life, your everyday.
So how does fear turn into a phobia?
So, so as I said, when we have that feeling of apprehension and the anxiety, so the anxiety we can feel that's in our stomach, it's in our body somewhere while breathing, and I'm kind of feeling a bit scared. I'm going for a job interview, and I'm having that kind of anxiety, fear. Oh my God, am I going to do well? But it's when it takes over, and we change it. Like I said, we'll have difficulty in actually doing and going. And being in the situation where we need to be in, and that's the difficulty. And I think it takes form in the physical sense as well. It turns out, our body, our emotional self, that body will be really overwhelming, and we'll have intense panic. So that intense panic feeling that I can't do this, and it stops us from moving forward, and we get detached from the reality of life, and we're just stuck. And we think this is just, it's quite an unreal moment for many people, and they lose that control, and they can't move forward. So, or they make decisions which are not appropriate for them at that moment, and they might run away from the situation because that's all they know what to do, rather than facing the fear, facing the phobia. And sometimes we can't face the phobia; it might be too dangerous. So when we're doing exposure therapy, for instance, for anxieties or any phobias, we have to really be really careful as to because if it's very complex, we're really, really careful, because we don't want to test that dangerous method. We don't want to test the client at that particular time. More so, we want to have a really good plan, have a focus, have a goal. So it's very clear that the whole of the individual, their whole mind, their body, their reactions to what's going on, that they can kind of stop and they can think before they do anything. Because if you go charging in with anybody, if you go charging in yourself, I'm just going to go and do it, and it becomes quite dangerous for them. Their breathing, their feelings of, they might get lightheaded, they might get dizzy, and we need to be really managing the individual, especially if they're coming in for sessions. But even for self-help, there's a lot of self-help books, a lot of self-help tools out there, but we've got to build that confidence within ourselves that I can do this. And it's okay to do this with a therapist, with a counsellor. It's okay to do this with a psychotherapist, and thinking, where is this deep-seated phobia coming from? It's something maybe from many years ago.
I was going to ask you, is this something that stems from childhood, or is it genetic?
So there's no hard and fast research, I think, whether it's genetic, as far as I'm aware of, but it can be projected. I know certainly, if you're an anxious person yourself and you have your children, they may adopt those behaviours, certainly. But as a cure, we know there's lots of therapy out there. We have cognitive behavioural therapy with somebody who's trained in that approach. We have exposure therapy, but guided very mindfully with a therapist. Anybody can come over their fears. It's just having that confidence and the will that I can do this, and believe in themselves that this is what I want, this is what I need, and I can do this, and I don't have to do it alone. That's the main important thing. Once you talk about it, that's the first step to getting better, inshallah.
Definitely. So in your career, Sahar, I'm sure you have come across so many cases where people have presented some kind of fear or phobia that's making things complicated, and their daily functioning is being affected. Give us some examples, some case studies that you came across.
Okay, so actually I can use myself actually in this one. Funny enough, there's a lot of cases but as a child I had a phobia of spiders, a real phobia of spiders, literally, because and it was inherited actually, and I'm sure my family member won't mind me saying this at all, but it's when I had, a spider was put into my bed, And
Oh,
that was
okay.
it. And that was it. That was it for me. So I would see the tiniest of spiders, and I'd run and I'd scream, and it became a phobia because I would stop. I couldn't function
Mm.
until I knew that the spider was no longer there. And then
Yeah.
it wasn't until many years later, going through this suffering of even when I had my children, that I
Yeah.
could not remove a spider physically. I'd have to get someone, I'd have to ring somebody to come and help. That's how far
Mm.
it got for me. Um,
Yeah.
and then accessing therapy with a CBT therapist. I had 3 sessions, so I had a bit of exposure therapy, but it was very guided and I was very looked after in the session. Had a lot of talking therapy before, where it stemmed from, just like I spoke to you. And it felt so
Yeah.
much better, and I felt safe. And this is the thing, is to be feeling safe with your therapist, whoever you choose to go to, whoever's there with you, feeling safe in that space. And then being guided that this is okay, it's not going to harm you, it's safe. I
Mm.
mean, it sounds like it's a small thing, but spiders are huge phobia for many people,
Yes.
just as myself. you
Yeah.
know I mean,
Definitely. Yeah.
yeah, and there's so many more phobias out there. The fear of going out of the home. We've had clients who haven't been able to get out of their home because of the
Mm.
fear of what's going to happen to them, the fear of what is
Yeah.
going to happen to their family, and it stops them function. They can't go to work, they can't go shopping, they can't meet family, they can't go to see friends, and it's looking at the threshold that if they go over this threshold, something bad's going to happen. And it's then looking at how can we build some confidence. So when we do home, we go home to the home,
Mm.
and they allow us in because you're
Okay.
home visit, because there's no another way. Or at the moment,
Yeah.
because everything is via Zoom or telephone call, we have to talk them through the steps. But it's gaining that confidence for themselves, and also looking at the backstory. Where did it come from? So
Yeah.
everybody's backstory would be very different, and it would be very different from whatever the phobia that they're presenting with. The story could be very different. So it's looking at that quite intensely, actually, really holding them very well, and gaining that confidence, that trust in relationship, that they're being heard, and you can, to a certain level, you can empathize. If you've been through fear phobias, you can really empathize and really hold the session in that space. It's a very sacred space for them. And
Yeah.
for me personally, I believe that once they gain that confidence, a client can achieve anything that they want. Inshallah.
Yeah. So say that to be fearless, to be free of fear, is to be free in life generally.
Alhamdulillah.
Um,
Yeah, yeah.
Talking about, phobias and developing fear, we know that it's a form of anxiety disorder, and some people even show symptoms of panic attack when they
Yes,
see something that they fear.
yes.
Um,
Mm.
if in someone in the family, say, for example, one of the parents, they fear something or they have developed a phobia, what are the chances that their children will also have the same phobia in later life?
Well, there is a high percentage. I don't quote me on the percent, but when they see that, they adopt a behaviour. They'll adopt that fear. They'll adopt that panic because they're seeing it in there every day. It's a natural
Yeah,
thing that if you and I were to be in a room full of people and there's many people there who have panic, they have fear, we're going to adopt that the same thing. When we're in any kind of environment where, I mean, I don't want to talk too much about what's going on in the world, but just look at
yeah,
the pandemic, how there's so much fear has been set in, and within children
yeah,
they've adopted community fear and phobia, which is just widespread everywhere. So we're in a pandemic of fear and phobia because
yeah.
this, am I allowed to use the word COVID? So
Of course you
but
are.
yeah, good.
I
And
was, I
it's
was
said
going
in
to
so
come
many
to that
things.
too, actually.
It's set in such fear, and we have the fear of, do we have this vaccine? Do we not have this vaccine?
Mm,
And this is creating another kind of sphere of phobia.
yeah,
If I
yeah.
don't have it, I'm going to die. If I have it, I'll live and I'll be fine. So there's two
Mm,
spectrums here. So globally, this fear that's set in with everybody in all communities. It doesn't matter what color, what background, demographic you are, what language you speak, everybody has got this set in similar fear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
And I
Unfortunately.
think there are so many things that are associated with this pandemic.
Mm.
Fear of
Yeah,
losing one's job or livelihood, fear of
absolutely.
becoming homeless,
Absolutely.
fear of
Well, that's what's
getting
happening.
the disease. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So there could
And
be
these,
multiple.
yeah, absolutely. And these fears have become people's realities. We have to remember these fears that are present have become people's realities. They have lost loved ones. They have become ill. They have recovered, but that fear of getting it again or dying from the pandemic, the COVID, they've lost jobs. They've
Yeah.
become homeless. You know,
Mm.
these are no fault of their own. They're not their doing. It's just how. One thing we have to remember when we come back into our spiritual self, whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills for us is,
Yeah.
He's the best of planners. And sometimes we can't comprehend this. Many people can't comprehend this. And especially for those who may not have a faith. So where
Yeah.
do we go
Yeah.
with this? So it's really important. How do we hold people? How do we
Mm.
hold? We can't say to somebody, or we mustn't say to them, well, whatever God wills, because they may not see that, they may not have that belief. But as Muslims, we believe, that whatever Allah wills the best for us, and we pray for
Yeah.
everybody. Pray for everybody, no matter where they are from, no matter what nationality, culture, color, language. Again, doesn't matter. But yeah, it's widespread everywhere. This fear, I fear it too. Human like you are, we have these
Yeah.
fears. We've
Yeah.
just been discussing the vaccine very recently. Do we have it? Do we not? And other countries that had the vaccine. It's just it's quite worrying. Actually, yeah.
So I think there are two factors. One is the fear of the unknown, of something that
Yeah.
you are not sure of. You don't know what's going to happen if I take this vaccine or if I don't take it. And then you have fears that are based on something you have experienced in the past, and you
Yeah.
kind of don't want to relive that experience. You don't want history to repeat itself. Do
Mm.
you get a lot of people with multiple fears, or people who have fear of the unknown as well as fear of something they have experienced in the past?
We do, and the thing here is we have to remind people we can't predict the future.
Yeah.
We have to remind ourselves and others, because we all fall into this trap, that
Uh-huh.
we mustn't. We're not here. We're not fortune tellers. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. So it's coming back
Yeah.
to grounding somebody. Actually, let's look at where we are here and now, okay, and what
Yeah.
we can do in the here and now. What tools you can use for yourself right now, reminding them that we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring, how it's going to be. We can
Yeah.
have a focus. We can kind of focus on things that are reasonable, where they can actually achieve something that's reasonable. Um, you know, for instance, the example I gave earlier in regards to somebody who can't go out their home, who just can't get over the threshold. Just even if
Yeah.
they can open the door to just stand at the threshold, that's a huge achievement. Just to stand and
Mm.
they can feel the air, the wind, they can feel the sunlight, they can see. And then if they put one foot in front of the threshold, imagine their feeling of achievement. And then we're talking about extreme measures here. But it's just looking at, yes, this is somebody else's reality. We might think, well, it's just going out into the front garden. But for them, it's not. This is a huge achievement.
One step at a time.
Absolutely, Marissa. You said it.
But in either case, whether it's exposure therapy or one step at a time or desensitizing oneself, in either case, you have to face your fears. That's like the only way you can get over it, right?
Absolutely. And for many, it's very hard. But
Yeah.
I know there's a lovely author, Christine Podesky. She's in America, and she does a
Uh-huh.
lot of cognitive behavioral therapy, and it's about developing that confidence, and facing your fear and just doing it anyway. I think there's another book written by Susan Jeffers, and feel the fear and do it anyway. As you
Okay.
was just saying, and it takes that level. Okay, I can do this. Believing in yourself is the most important thing. When you're connected to
Yeah.
yourself, you can achieve mountains. It's about the self-belief and having confidence that I can do this. I have a choice. So when we do stop and we think about things and think, okay, before instead of rushing in, we need to connect to our whole total well-being, mind, body, spiritually, you know, because our nafs, we know, plays lots of havoc with us. Okay, so we stop and we think, and then we think, okay, what's my plan of action? What do I need to do? Who do I need to do this with? What help, support do I need around me? Do I talk to my family, my friends, my colleagues? And really underpinning all that. And then actually doing. And you'll see different responses. You'll react very differently. You'll be very different, inshallah.
So there can be internal factors as well as external factors that contribute
Absolutely.
towards that fear. You may be
Absolutely.
fearless, but then there will be people around or the environment that you live in that
Yeah.
kind of introduces that fear or that mindset. How do you tackle with that? How do you deal with that?
Well, it's really looking at how do we break down what's going on in our environment around us?
Yeah.
How do we break down who's supportive, who's not? How do we really think about engaging with other people who are on the same page as where I am, who would actually understand where I'm coming from and be helpful to me rather than unhelpful? And sometimes it takes a lot for an individual to actually even get to that mindset. But having some positive coping strategies and statements for the self to say to yourself, that I can achieve this. I need a bit of time. I need this person, or I need to go to this therapist, or whatever it might be. I need to find a way to find a good coping mechanism and statements for myself. Looking at facing the phobia, I might have felt this way for a very long time, and there's nothing terrible is going to happen right now if I just try, if I just move, if I just put my foot over the threshold. Nothing bad is going to happen. I'll see the sunlight, I'll feel the air, I might see people walking, but nothing bad is going to happen to me. So it's talking to the self, really encouraging yourself to feel that nothing bad is going to happen. Because it's terrifying for an individual, really terrifying for an individual, especially if they are on their own and there's nobody around them to support them or who understands them. So the key thing here is really engaging with other people to inform them and tell them, look, I have this fear, I'm feeling really scared. It's turned into a phobia. I can't move, I can't do. And it's amazing how many people come forward to actually really to help. But if the person next to you doesn't know, how are you going to get that help? So communication is key. Communicate how you're feeling. Non-verbally, if I'm going to sit there quite udas and sad and things, somebody's going to say, well, what's wrong? Are you okay? Same thing, talk about it.
Can phobias lead to other mental health issues? What are the chances of developing other
Definitely.
problems?
Yeah, I mean, definitely with phobias, we find there's a lot of, you have the general anxiety that you might have, but also depression. Depression is one of the highest things that people with phobias have. And yes, you can take medications. There are lots of different medications. If you speak with your consultant, your GP, there's a general anxiety medications that one can take. But I always recommend you speak with your GP for that. There's lots of self-help. Group work is important, because when you talk to like-minded people, if you're depressed and feeling quite sad, and you can't get out of the house, and it's really hard. But everything in the world has changed right now. Everything has turned to technology. I mean, even me having this fear of working technology, I have a huge fear about it. I'm trying to overcome the fear, because I know that in myself I can try. If it goes wrong, it goes wrong. It doesn't matter. I just pick myself up again and try again. Just like this morning, just like earlier on, I couldn't log in. And I'm getting hot and flustered. I'm thinking, oh my God, I can't do this. I'm thinking, no, hold on. You told me what to do. The brother is there. I'm calm and I've logged in. So these are just small things, but everybody has a fear. and the depression for many people can really be a huge factor for them to what they do and how they overcome the general anxieties, their fears and phobias.
I think it's the mindset in the sense that you gave an example just now. We kind of fear what's going to happen, what are the consequences of certain actions. And I think we suffer more in our imagination than in reality because it's all up here. But as you mentioned, it's not easy. It's quite terrifying for the person who's experiencing it to get over it, to confront it. And I think most of us, the reason we allow this fear to rule us is because we don't want to face it for whatever reasons. And you said that in your therapeutic relationship with the client, you give them a very supportive environment and you work together to get over that.
Absolutely.
What about those people, Sahar, who may not even be aware that they have a phobia and they're just kind of moving on, they're living their life despite the fact that they have that problem?
So very interesting. So how would anybody notice? So if they have family or friends who are very close to them, they will maybe notice and maybe they will speak about it. Because if we don't know something about ourselves, it's that blind spot we have sometimes. And that's just a very general phrase I'm using as a blind spot because in phobias, as you said, we might not know it's a phobia. But I'm doing something that's not normal. That I may notice, or somebody might notice, well, actually, what they're doing is not normal. But it's having the confidence to talk to somebody. How am I going to be self-aware of myself? I'm doing something that's not normal. I can see everybody doing other things, but I'm doing something very different. It's until they realize, actually, well, this is detrimental to my everyday. This is affecting my relationships. This is affecting work. Waking up to themselves and acknowledging, actually, something's not quite right here. And accessing the right kind of support, because they may not know where to go or who to ask. So it's having that confidence again. Who's closest to me? Is it a very good friend of mine? Is it a family member? How do I know? Or am I going to go online now and look and put in on Google search, I have all these symptoms, and it creates a whole world of God knows what. I always say to people, don't look at Google. Don't tap into putting all these things in there that you'll have all different things that come up, which creates a different atmosphere of phobia in itself. Then you've got every element that any one body could have. So I always say communicate. If you're not sure about something that you're doing and you think, actually, this is not quite right, I'm doing something and it feels that I'm not feeling good, talk. Let's talk. I always say to people, talk about it. It will get you that one step further in your life. It'll open other doors. It'll open other avenues of your thinking. It'll get you the support that you might need just by having that one conversation with somebody. And if that person doesn't know, I'm sure they will say, let's find out together. Let's find out what kind of support you need.
Can you give us some examples, Sahar, of phobias that may not be common or people are not aware of, but it exists?
Yeah, oh my goodness, there's a lot. You can have food phobias. I think there was a certain one, I'm not sure, don't quote me on it. There's one around cheese. I know of. There's some around cheese. There's quite a few different ones.
Fear of England.
Fear, fear of traveling everywhere nowadays. Fear of going out in the sunlight. These are these are very rare phobias, but there's quite a few. I'm sure there's more than I know of. I'm not sure. Do you know of any of these yourself? I mean, maybe viewers may have something.
I was thinking of hydrophobia. It's kind of common. It used to be common at one point, and the reason people used to fear dogs was because of getting hydrophobic. It wasn't the dog itself, but the consequences of what will happen if the dog bites.
That's right. Yes, yeah, absolutely. I did say earlier that one of those is dog, phobia around being around dogs. The fear of being bitten, and also the fear of just the dog licking you. The fear of the dog biting, and because we know that if you have a bite, the fear of infection and disease, if a dog is infected or diseased, and that it's an animal bite, it's quite vicious, and just that's quite traumatizing. So
Yeah.
the trauma behind what hasn't happened, so that's already there in the forefront. So the trauma before a dog even is near you, the fear of, okay, it's coming near me, it's going to bite me, you know, and what happens to our body. But yeah, it's very it's quite more common when you talk about it now. It's actually more common. I know so many people now, when I'm thinking about it, who are so scared of dogs.
Yeah. You mentioned trauma. A lot of people who have experienced some form of trauma in their life, whether it's breakdown of a relationship, losing a loved one, or people who have been victims of war or torture, or people living in refugee camps, for example, they experience post-traumatic stress. What are their chances of developing phobias in later life?
Quite a lot actually, a high percent. But working with a therapist, and I'm sure people who were as far as where my practice and work and with other organisations, is allowing them to have that space, because trauma is trauma, and it's an individual, and it's an individual. There's no cure per se as to say, yes, you'll get better by this time. There's no time limit on that. But it's what we do and how we do it with the individual. There's lots of different forms of therapy for trauma. Talking therapy is just one of them. We have so many other. But in regards to your question, there can be an element of developing real fear, going into back to a country where they've experienced the trauma. War countries, you know, they'll have different behaviours that they're displaying if they're a refugee or an asylum in the particular country that they're residing in. They'll experience different behaviours. Any kind of smell or trigger, any sound will trigger something. So they become, you know, the heightened responses, the emotional self is so heightened that for everything that they do is going to be heightened. The senses, all our senses are more heightened.
So
that will set off.
How do you help people who get these emotional triggers and they want to get over the fear, but there are so many things in the environment that kind of sets that trigger, and despite trying, they're unable to?
So again, it's individual. It's allowing them to voice, allowing them to have that space to talk, and again, wherever they might be, normalizing that where they are in that immediacy. It's not normalizing the trauma. Trauma's happened. It's a memory now. People have with physical trauma is very different. So when we have traumas from, you know, we touched on the war-torn countries and things, and whether it's a physical sexual violence, you know, there's a lot of that, and just seeing death around, and the memories of seeing death. So what's stored in the memory is very important. How do we manage and compartmentalize all these things? How do we come to terms? It's a very light word, but to come to terms with, yes, this has happened. But again, tapping into the self, that where they are, they're safe right now. But as you said, if they're in an environment where it's constant, and they're going to be re-traumatized again and again, emotionally, maybe not physically, but emotionally, psychologically, they're seeing the same event over, those flashbacks over again and over again, and they may be in that environment where it's happening right in front of them.
Or maybe if they're in a relationship where it's like walking on eggshells, where despite being inside home, they feel unsafe. They still have fear.
Yeah, absolutely. Many, men and women experiencing that fear in the home, whether it's domestic violence or whether it's the recurrence of the flashbacks of what's happening. And this is where it's really important for the individual to seek help and get the appropriate help that's needed from a trained trauma therapist.
Sahar, you mentioned one of the ways of treating phobias, exposure therapy. What other interventions do you use to help people get over phobias?
So you can use tapping therapy. which is about the tapping. You know, you have certain points in the body like acupuncture, acupressure, and we have eye movement desensitization reprocessing, which is EMDR. Okay,
Yeah.
so those are two. We can also use, you know, we have the talking therapy. There's exposure therapy, as in being in an environment, being out of the home, out of a clinic, being outside. We can use equine therapy, which is
Okay.
equine therapy is therapy with horses. So you're with a therapist with the horse. That's actually quite amazing. And there's something about being in nature, you know, and it also depends on the extreme of what the trauma might be. We have cognitive behavioral therapy, which we don't always use for trauma per se, but it's just being able to look at rationalizing some of our irrational thoughts to then move on to trauma therapy. It's because trauma is held in the body,
Yeah.
so it's very somatic. So, but it's very real. So we want to be able to understand and manage what is going on internally, and then working on externally what we can practically do. So there is a lot of different kinds of, you know, I mean, you can also have hypnotherapy. You're not hypnotized per se, but it's a form of relaxation to look at where those memories are. We don't want to re-traumatize somebody to bring up everything and necessarily talk about it, but what's happening in the moment, and letting it go, but very safely.
My final question, Sahar, because we only have 5 minutes left.
Sure.
What role does faith play in getting over your fears or even preventing phobias?
Okay. So faith is very individual. You know, it's, you know, we may have the same faith, no matter what faith you are. You could be Muslim, you could be Hindu, Sikh, Christian, Buddhist, whatever your faith is. It's your connection to yourself, connection to who your maker is, who your Lord is. Really looking within yourself, your trust within Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that whatever you ordains for me will be, and to stay connected with your heart, to stay connected with your mind, and rationalizing many things. Our nafs plays havoc. I say to this client, when it's a nafs issue, we have to think, is this a nafs issue? Is this a shaitani issue? And all this. But we have to really think our faith is the healer for all.
Definitely.
So when we're
As they
looking
say,
within
feed your
to...
faith. Feed
Absolutely. I
your
mean, there's
faith,
so many...
starve your fears.
Absolutely. You said it. Yes. Actually had something written down here, just like that.
Go
But it
ahead.
is. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, you know, when we feed our body, we feed our spiritual self as well. So whether it's through our salah, our dua, our zikr, talking to others, reading stories of Quranic stories, reading the Prophet's life, the seerah, you know, just when we connect internally with all these factors, it's really, really key in establishing a positive outcome for ourselves, inshallah. Allah make it easy for everybody, inshallah.
Of course. Your final message for our viewers, Sahar.
Is to believe in yourself. You can achieve and do anything you want to. You can gain the confidence within yourself. Reach out to others. Don't be afraid, and don't be scared or embarrassed or shy. There's so many people out there who can help you. You don't have to be on your own.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Sahar, for everything.
Jazakallah khair for having
Inshallah,
me.
absolute honor. All those people who are watching right now, as Sahar said, that the best way to overcome your fears is to confront them. And people like Sahar Beg are there to support you, to provide that guidance, that therapeutic touch in your life to get over whatever you're being affected with. But as long as you get through those fears, it's okay, because being courageous doesn't mean to be free from fear. Fear is always going to be there. It's part of this journey called life, and we cannot live in a world that is free of fear. But to get through it, to overcome that, this is something which is in your hand. And there are so many organizations that are supporting people with different kinds of anxieties and fears. And Mindworks UK is one of them. And counselors and psychotherapists like Sahar Beg are there to provide that kind of support. in a very confidential way, speaking in the language that you're comfortable with. And if you're struggling financially, they're there to support you despite that fact. Um, it's been a very difficult year for most of us, and there are thousands of people out there who have a fear of losing their job, or they have already lost their jobs or their loved ones. There are people who have become homeless. But to get over that fear and to rebuild life, there's hope. There are people out there who are more than happy to support you. If you are experiencing any kind of phobia or fear, all you need to do is reach out to them. Inshallah, we'll meet you next Saturday with another fantastic guest and another topic discussing mental health. Till then, look after yourselves and most importantly, look after your psychological well being and mental health. Till then, Assalamu alaikum.